That's kind of insane. Dude, the enemies over there are dying. And then those enemies are dying. Oh my goodness. Bro, what? That was from 1-1 ability. I clicked my 1 once and they're still dying. Yo guys, what is up? Max on our first Descendant video, and today we're going over the massive patch that just dropped in TFD. With this patch, we have like huge buffs to Kyle and Esiemo, and we have a pretty massive Freyna rework. Freyna looks absolutely insane right now. We've got new modules in the game and so much more to talk about. Hope you guys enjoy the breakdown. Let's get right into it. So to start, we've got content improvements. You can now start public operations in the invasion, meaning you can play with friends, and the amount of people that you're playing with will influence the amount of monsters that spawn. And if you interact with the Order of Truth, the drone will now make other drones despawn so that you'll know where to go and stand so that you don't die if someone else interacts with a drone. Next up, in the bunny cave, the Fortress Fallen Arc Void Fragment, they kind of like blew out one of the walls and are putting a like sniper in the second round. So now you won't be able to AFK bunny cave. Personally, I think this is a fine change. I don't think AFK farming is good for the health of the game. So them kind of nerfing the like AFK bunny farm, I think is great. They also are adjusting traps in certain dungeons. So they adjusted traps in Sterile Land, Agna Desert, White Knight Gulch, and Hagios. And the amount of HP orbs and ammo drops by scout monsters roaming the field has increased. So it should be easier for you to heal while you're playing in the open world. Next up, we get to our Descendant changes. To start, we've got Eugen's Hyperactive Healing Ground skill now heals HP after grant purification rather than before. Good change there. And then we get the like big Descendant reworks. As you can see, there's a lot of notes here with just kind of like they've kind of changed / reworked and buffed Freyna, Esiemo, and Kyle. These are some of the biggest changes we've ever seen to Descendants during the course of this game's life cycle. So pretty insane here. We're going to go through the changes and we'll kind of like break them down. So, Freyna's Room Zero Trauma, they fixed an issue where Room Zero Trauma was set as poison, making it impossible to deal damage to the toxic Colossus, and then they've added Contagion Links. The effect of Contagion Links have been changed as follows. Killing an enemy inflicted with Room Zero Trauma has a chance to spawn a toxic puddle on the place where the enemy was killed. Enemies receive damage and get inflicted with Room Zero Trauma upon contact with the toxic puddle. The damage of Room Zero Trauma has been increased, and it's been adjusted to apply the toxic reaction effect instead of poison, and the toxic reaction effect deals more damage compared to the previous poison effect and can be applied simultaneously with panic, despair, decay, and nightmare effects. So to kind of further break that down, basically they've completely changed her passive, where now all of your abilities will be applying Room Zero Trauma. You can see Room Zero Trauma is linked to every single ability, which in of itself is going to deal way more damage. This used to be a 10% modifier. They have changed it to a 188% modifier, which I can't even begin to describe how much of a buff that is. And then they've added even more damage to all of her abilities, because now whenever you're inflicting Room Zero Trauma on enemies, you're going to be generating toxic puddles. And you've also got a new toxic reaction effect, which is another 133% modifier. And all of her abilities will inflict even more modifier, and all of those modifiers stack. So your one ability inflicts panic, which is a 174% modifier. All of them are the same. Your 2 inflicts despair. Your 3rd ability inflicts putrid, and your 4th ability inflicts nightmare. All of these effects are massive dots that can stack, but they've also buffed up her like base dot damage, and now all of her abilities are going to be able to leave poison puddles. It's not just the 3. The 3 is going to leave the toxic swamp, which is obviously like a big stationary puddle. But whenever you're killing enemies, you're going to be leaving these like toxic puddles on the ground, which them in themselves are also going to be dealing dot damage. So you've got like, just if you look at her like passive ability alone, you've got 3 instances of dot damage just on her passive. I haven't really messed around with her too much, but this should be a absolutely massive buff to Freyna, and I think she's going to be one of the strongest options for room clear, especially in the new hardest dungeon content that we can talk about a little bit later, but it looks fantastic. In the patch notes, we kind of just break down everything that I just said. The 1 got buffed, the 2 got buffed and inflicts despair, the 3 got buffed, and all of these damage effects are stacking. The 4th ability got buffed, so the 4th ability now is dealing more flat skill damage. Just to take a peek real quick, this is a video that I made a while ago, and in that video, the 4th ability was doing 269 base damage, and now it's doing 768 base damage modifier. So just a disgusting damage increase for the 4th ability. I think Freyna's going to genuinely be one of the best Descendants in the game after this change. Her bossing and mobbing should be kind of crazy. So great changes there. And then they also changed Contagion and Neurotoxin Synthesis. So Contagion now reads when you defeat an enemy, you now inflict room 0 trauma instead of poison. This change is applied together with other changes made to skills with this patch. Increase the number of toxic puddles spawning from Contagion links, and the room 0 trauma caused by skills with the Contagion module does not inflict toxic reaction, panic, despair, decay, or nightmare. So you should just be able to spawn a whole bunch more like puddles with Contagion. Neurotoxin Synthesis. This change is applied together with other changes made to skills with this patch. Increase the damage of room 0 trauma. So if we are looking at our 4th ability, our room 0 trauma with the 4th ability does 188% modifier. Now with Neurotoxin Synthesis, now it does 188. So it seems like Neurotoxin Synthesis might possibly be bugged, or the buff is just not visually applying. I'll have to test that more. But yeah, this should increase room 0 trauma and make it not spread poison. Right now, visually, it's not increasing the damage at all, and you wouldn't be able to spread your damage, so it would just make your abilities worse. So hopefully that is addressed shortly. Next up, we get to talk about Kyle. The first thing that they changed is his passive, Experienced Technician. They decreased its shield recovery. In exchange, the cooldown has been decreased. You now recover a certain amount of magnetic force upon the activation, even if no enemies are hit by the effect. And you'll recover more magnetic force depending on the number of enemies hit. And they decrease the stack cooldown while increasing the damage. So Kyle's passive before was on a 300-second cooldown. It's now on a 150-second cooldown. I still think this is too long, personally, but you're going to build a lot of cooldown on Kyle anyways, and you'll now get more max magnetic force when it's proccing, which procs whenever you are, you lose all your shield. So anytime you're losing all of your shield, you're going to be getting a bunch of shield back and some extra magnetic force back, which is pretty solid. I still think his passive needs some buffs, though, but that's the first look there. Next up, we get to Magnetic Bulwark and Diamagnetic Bulwark. So now while using his second ability, you recover magnetic force by a certain percentage of max shield over time. The shield cost while using the skill has also been slightly increased, and the barrier for Magnetic Bulwark is now affected by Kyle's attribute resistance, and the barrier's HP is now more proportional to Kyle's shield and increased the cooldown of Magnetic Bulwark. Basically, all good changes. So basically, if you pull out his shield, normally you would do this like in a Colossus fight, and if the Colossus was shooting at you, you could build up some of your passive. Now, even if you don't take any damage or the Colossus is shooting at your teammates, you're still going to be able to build up his passive, which you can use to then feed into your 4. So I really like that change. It obviously is going to cost you shield, but there's a bunch of new shield things to get shield back with this patch. So the 2 is much improved. Next, we get to Magnetism Spurt and Self-Directed Eruption. They increased the skill effect range. Let's check this real quick. So max expandable range is 250 now. That used to be 200%, so he should be better at mobbing as well with that. The Magnetism Spurt skill now heals your shield as well as your ally's shield. It now costs more magnetic force, and the skill cooldown has been increased. Real quick before we continue on in the video, this increased cooldown to the magnetic spurt just makes Kyle feel a bit worse for mobbing. You can still get his ability on a low cooldown to spam if you're properly proccing it with multi-talented. So here I've got it on I think it's a 3-second cooldown, but obviously this is because I'm constantly being able to proc multi-talented because it's a dimensional ability. If I'm trying to play Kyle to his fullest and using the dash and using the magnetism spurt because this isn't dimension, then multi-talented doesn't proc, and then this is on a 7-second cooldown where pre-buff, it was on like a 2 to 3 second cooldown. So now, you know, as you can see, like if I'm trying to chain them like back and forth, oh, my game is crashing. But you just can't really chain the abilities back and forth as well as you could have, which makes him feel a little bit more awkward. So hopefully that's something that they revert, because, you know, I think Kyle should be able to do mobbing and bossing. Slightly increase the skill power modifier for the damage of magnetism spurt, while slightly decreasing the additional damage magnetic force modifier. When the self-directed eruption skill ends, it no longer heals the shield of allies. It now heals your shields instead, and the duration of traction has been increased. That's pretty cool. You should have a way to self-proc shield increases with that, and increase the skill power modifier for the damage of self-directed eruption, while slightly decreasing the additional damage magnetic force modifier. Next, we get to superconductivity thrusters and superconductive bombing. They greatly increase the damage of superconductive thrusters while increasing the cooldown. We were just looking at this. They weren't joking. His fourth ability is now a 26,000 damage modifier. This is almost 3 times the damage of what it used to do, which is disgusting. And it gets an additional 12,000% damage modifier off of his like passive, which is just disgusting. People in chat are telling me that you can now one-shot devour with Kyle 4, which is crazy, and you should be able to get into his fourth ability faster with his changes like to his 2. So that is absolutely disgusting. They also buffed the superconductive bombing mod. So now this is going while you're like flying around and dropping bombs on the ground. Those bombs are going to deal more damage, and it's also affected by duration. So you should be able to fly around for longer, dropping more bombs. So if you want to turn into an AC 130 with Kyle, now is your chance. Next, we get to Esiemo. The first thing that they changed is his passive, Advantageous Habit. This effect is now triggered when you're hit instead of when your shield is depleted, so it should be easier to proc. And using skills now reduce the cooldown of Advantageous Habit by a certain amount, and then they increase the cooldown. If you're not aware, Esiemo's passive allows you now, when you get hit, you are going to drop a bomb that does a whole bunch of damage, and anytime that you use a skill, which you're going to be spamming skills, you get 2 seconds off, and you can kind of just spam a bunch of skills, get a bunch of cooldown, just a little bit of extra passive damage for you. Next, Time Bomb. Skills can now be used while sprinting, and the aftercast delay has been adjusted. The projectile speed has also been increased. This should make Esiemo just feel a little bit better to use and like play on the go, because he was very much like a Descendant that you had to basically kind of set up for his damage, and that's still going to be the case, but now it should be a little bit smoother to play. Next, for Blast and Cluster Bomb, you can now switch to other actions earlier when using the skill, and it no longer costs MP, and the cooldown has been decreased, meaning there's never going to be a time where you can't detonate explosives that you put down. The Blast skill is now affected by more bombs, and they increase the damage based on the number of bombs. The explosives that spawn upon using the Cluster Bomb skill now explode earlier than before. The number of damage of explosives have been increased, and the explosion range has been reduced. The damage of Cluster Bomb now is increased based on the number of bombs. So what that's talking about is his second ability, which detonates all of your bombs, now is going to give you more damage. It's got less cooldown, no MP cost, and can scale up higher. So you're getting 35% damage per bomb, and you're getting that stacked up 8 times, which his bombs should be hitting pretty hard. If you're using his Transcendent mod, Cluster Bomb, which detonates additional explosives, now you'll see that you're getting an additional hit with some burn damage. I still don't know if this is going to be worth using, because the damage goes down to 15% per bomb rather than 35%, and you do get a little bit of extra modifier on that. I'll have to mess around with that. Hopefully we'll have an Esiemo build out soon. Next, we've got Guided Landmine. This skill can now be activated while moving, and you can perform other actions when using the skill quicker than before. Once again, just making Esiemo feel better while fighting on the go. An attached bomb now takes longer to automatically explode. I don't really get that change, but slightly increase the travel speed of the installed guided landmines towards enemies. Installed guided landmines can now also be exploded with Blast. So once again, changing his ability to kind of fight on the go. And I don't really get why they would make them take longer to automatically explode, but you can explode them now with Blast, which is great. Arcade Explosion simplified the skill's animation, and now you're immune to knockback and knockdown while using the skill. Increase the duration of madness. Its effects now also include an increase of skill power. So his fourth ability, you now go very fast during. It's a 120% movement speed increase. I don't know what it was before. And the duration of his buff, whoopsies, get rid of that, is now 14 seconds. So after you proc this, you've got 14 seconds of 25% more skill power, 25% more firearm attack. You get more defense and lower movement speed. Should be able to try to get this on a loop where you've got like a pretty low cooldown on this, where you can kind of keep it up all the time to just constantly be getting more damage for yourself. That is pretty cool. And then we've got Explosive Evade, increase the maximum number of guided landmines that can be installed. This is his, like, when you dodge, you drop a landmine. Explosive Propaganda, you can now use the skill while moving. The skill can now be stacked now, and the cooldown has decreased slightly. And an installed Explosive Propaganda is now proportionally affected by Esiemo's HP and defense, and its damage has been slightly reduced. Good stuff there. And then Creative Explosion simplified the skill's animation, and you're now immune to knockback and knockdown while using the skill. The number of bombs that affect the blast skill when equipped with Creative Explosion skill module has been increased. Decrease the skill power modifier, increase per stack, and increase the duration of madness. Also increase the cooldown decrease effect. So Creative Explosion is Esiemo's Transcendent module that affects his fourth ability. So if we look at the fourth now, it's going to give an 85% damage, with the burst damage being 7.4k. If we put on Creative Explosion, we're going to get a little bit more starting damage, but the burst damage goes down more. And it's going to proc Narcissism, which gives us a 40% cooldown decrease. We lose the skill power and the gun damage. And then it is also going to basically scale more with the amount of like landmines that are procced. The way Creative Explosion works is you're trying to basically proc all of your damage instead of with Blast. You're trying to proc all of your damage with Creative Explosion. The fact that this is a 40-second cooldown versus an 80-second cooldown should mean that if you build into this Creative Explosion, now with a way lower cooldown, should be able to keep this up way more often. And I think maybe possibly use this for mobbing, which would be kind of neat. Definitely going to need to mess around with that. Next up, we get new modules. Biosync Shield reduces your HP recovery from HP orbs by a certain amount and instead heals the shield by the set amount. I absolutely love this. One of the tough things about using a shield build in a Colossus fight is you can get orbs that can heal you, but you can't get orbs that heal your shield. Now with this mod, you can, which is awesome. And then we have Last Stand. When using a skill to attack enemies, consume all of your shield to deal additional damage equivalent to a certain percentage of the total damage. The additional damage has a base value, and the value increases based on the amount of shield consumed. After activation, recover shield by a certain percentage of max shield every second for a certain period of time. It has a cooldown. This sounds freaking awesome. Potentially a very cool Kyle mod that you could use with his fourth ability to make it deal even more damage. Definitely something I need to check out. Next, we have UI and UX improvements. You can now check the recommended stats for each intercept battle. I actually haven't looked at this yet. So if we click on, let's say, Pyromaniac, whoa, it's going to give you your recommended weapon DPS, HP, max shields, defense, and fire resistance, and show you what you currently have. That's pretty cool. What does it say for Gluttony? Out of curiosity. 450k DPS, 17,000 HP, 55,000 defense, 20,000 chill resistance. And it shows you recommended modules for Gluttony. Is this going to be a way to like look up builds for fights? That's very interesting. I think this is great. My only concern with this is I think people are going to look too hard into the DPS number. Hopefully, that's not the case. But once again, your weapon DPS really doesn't really reflect how much damage you're actually doing. There's so many things on your actual weapon DPS, like weak point damage, elements, that it just like, doesn't really factor in. So I wouldn't look too hard at like your DPS on your weapon too much, but kind of getting an estimate for how much HP and like defense you should have or shield, I think is a pretty cool change. And hopefully this recommended module page works out well. And you can like kind of like add builds or things so that people can find builds for the things they're using. Up, you can't delete your ultimate weapons accidentally. Good change there. There's a bunch of like kind of miscellaneous changes here. Biggest one, in my opinion, is that now tracked items in the research UI will no longer be untracked when the research is completed. This means that you can just kind of pin your like energy activators and catalysts and just research them a bunch. And not have to do that every single time and have to type into the search bar to find them. Just a nice little quality of life change there. Next up, we got a bunch of optimization improvements. Once again, I'll have a link to these patch notes down below if you want to read through everything. Like these like more smaller details. Not going to go over all of them, but they did make some nice optimization changes. And then we've got miscellaneous changes. You can now view spawn, despawn animations for each descendant in Customize, and added the feature to rewatch cinematics. If you wanted to rewatch your cinematics with your character customization kind of on, now arc traces can now be found in the following locations, and the infiltration operation cinematic can be viewed again by starting the private operation. Lastly, we've got the director's comment. Since cinematics provide higher quality lighting compared to the usual gameplay environment, they're perfectly suited for players to examine their customization. I plan on kind of doing that for some build videos. I think would be cool for like intros. And then they added a bunch of things in the shop. Let me see those. So we've got new premium skins. This is the new Freyna skin. Looks very Hive Guardian, kind of Destiny-esque. We've got the Glay Vampire skin. This was in the betas. It's returning. And the Valby Frog skin looks solid. And then we've got the ultimate skins. So basically what they did with these is they're keeping the ultimate bundles, but they are changing the cosmetics in them. So like, for example, I already own a lot of things in the Lepic bundle. So I could buy just basically the customization with the Descendant slot and not buy Ultimate Lepic. So it discounts that for me. But as you can see, this is the Ultimate Lepic new skin. It looks really cool, but it looks even cooler with the freaking like back attachments. Now, apparently these back attachments are locked to these Descendants. I obviously haven't made a purchase yet, but it seems like if you like wanted these wings on Bunny, you can't do that yet. Hopefully that's something that they fix. And they also come with a whole bunch of new spawn animations, which are actually crazy. Here's Ultimate Viessa, and Ultimate Viessa with her like back attachment looks pretty cool. There's Ultimate Ajax. I'll show you this spawn animation because it's pretty insane. Some of them have some like really, really cool spawn animations. They're definitely stepping up their game in that department. Here's Ultimate Bunny with her back attachment. This is also a freaking really cool spawn animation. These are definitely expensive packs, but you do get like the energy activator and some crystallization catalyst with them as well. Then we've got the Ultimate Glay bundle. I think this looks awesome. I really, really like Ultimate Glay. And then she's got the like kind of spike wings with the bloody feast disappear into a bloody cloud animation. It looks really good. There's a note here that says the back attachments and spawn included in the premium Ultimate Descendant bundles are exclusive to the corresponding Ultimate Descendants and cannot be used by other Descendants. So it looks like that is very much intentional. Kind of a bit of a bummer on that, but it seems like that's what they're going with. So we get some bug fixes. Note that they bug fixed Haley's Zenith skill when you were using it on an unstable network connection. Right now, if you go and look at Zenith, there's just no description on it at all. So hopefully they fix that. It's literally just like a blank page. But they did do some weapon module changes. Executor's Exaltation effect no longer activates when attacking enemies that are immune to the effect or hitting environment objects in intercept battles. I didn't know this, but it sounds like you could maybe shoot a wall with this gun and like stack up its buff. There was an issue where you could swap Wave of Light, like proc its damage buff, and then swap to another weapon. So they nerfed that. And then they nerfed the lethal finish snapshot with the King's Guardian Lance, which is something that I was using where you could like put down a King's Guard Lance with lethal finish proc and then get 100% crit rate on it like all the time. So that's got nerfed as well. Probably have to update that build. Lastly, a little miscellaneous change. They increased the barricade height of all outposts to 2 meters or higher. So if you're hiding behind them as a Sharon, it should be easier to not get spotted at any time. Good changes there. And then we get the director's additional comment, which they say we prepared Dev Note Volume 4, along with the hotfix to tell you about the upcoming October 10th update. I might have that as a separate video because there's a lot to talk about there. And then they also have a new Freyna encrypted vault shop event, which is going on, which is actually really cool. I've got the page here. Basically, this is an event that you can log into on the website. As you can see, I'm already logged in. And there are missions that you're going to do, daily and weekly missions that will give you points. They seem really easy to do. Shouldn't take you much time. For example, like complete 4 missions on normal or hard, complete 2 infiltrations on normal and hard, and all of these points will give you points to spend in the item shop, which you can get up to 3 crystallization catalysts. You can buy like infinite ion accelerators or phase exchangers. You can also exchange them for like weapon parts, so you can fully build out like a Fallen Hope. Just like you don't need to farm it. That's probably what I'm gonna do, because I think the Fallen Hope is bad right now, but I'm hoping that it gets a buff when Ultimate Freyna comes out. So that's probably where I'm gonna go. But you can exchange your things for like weapon parts, but you can also exchange them for boosters. So if you need like a gold booster or a weapon booster, you can exchange for that. You can also exchange just for 200,000 gold, which you can exchange infinitely. And there's also ultra precision code breakers. Seems like a pretty generous event, and all you have to do is like log in and play the game like how you normally would. And there's gonna be 5 weeks of this event, so it should be a really good way to just get a bunch of stuff if you need it. And hopefully they like cycle out these weapons, because it'd be really cool if we saw like, you know, some of the crazier weapons in here. A lot of these are pretty standard weapons. But yeah, guys, that is going to do it for the video. Keep your eyes up for the update on the October 10th thing that's happening. And also, I will have like updated guides and impressions with Freyna and Esiemo and Kyle. That's going to do it for the video, guys. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Peace.